There are some wild developments surrounding this big scandal right now with Charles Hoskinson and the initial redemption of ADA. And what you need to know is that the allegations aren't true, and in fact, the big scammer has just been exposed. And we're going to talk about that in this video. But I do want to talk about a community question that I think is very important because we were talking about this all the way back in 2023, and this continues to play out to perfection. This is why I think ADA is going to make some pretty significant strides the deeper we get here. So if you guys are new or haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that bell. It's free to do. It'll keep you updated anytime there's new content live here on the channel. So right now it's about 6:40 a.m. Central Standard Time, and go figure, we've seen some things turn red. We're seeing some profit taking, kind of like I talked about in my earlier ADA video, which just went live. And guys, this isn't really surprising. We'll see what the day brings. Hopefully it's more green. I understand if there's red. Sometimes you need just a little breath of fresh air before you continue on these massive runs. And I want to remind everybody, last time ADA had significant surges, there were kind of breaths along the way. There were red days, but that could turn into some pretty significant fuel and continue to surge ADA to the upside. And well, I'll get to this more here in just a moment, but what I do want to talk about first of all is this big scandal. And there were questions, and we did a video talking about this surrounding Charles Hoskinson, the initial redemption of ADA, and there were some pretty big accusations that he stole $600 million worth of ADA. And right now there is an audit going on, and I'm sure that this audit is going to show that nothing in fact happened. In fact, he's, like I said before, he's acting like a guy who has nothing to hide. He's like, "Yep, do the audit. It'll show exactly this." And what has come out is that this NFT artist, Masato Alexander, the guy who made these pretty bold accusations, is actually trying to farm for clout. He's trying to farm for exposure, because what he's doing is he's actually launching an Ethereum project. And what he's trying to do is gain enough notoriety, gain enough optics so he can raise money to launch this Ethereum dApp, which I think is pretty shitty. And what you guys need to understand is that there are some absolute garbage people in this space. There are tons of scammers and grifters. And unfortunately, crypto has been riddled with this for a very long period of time. And I honestly hope he gets sued. That's just a bunch of BS. And to attack Cardano, to attack Charles Hoskinson, I think that's very, I was trying to think of the right word and keep it PG for you guys, but it's basically a big old bunch of BS. And guess what? Cardano will prevail just as it has many times before. So I thought this was important that people get kind of the backstory behind this. This was exposed with screenshots. And yeah, so I think that's going to fade away into one of the many failed attempts to FUD Cardano over its life cycle. Now, what I did want to talk about is actually this community question. And what this was from Raul Gonzalez. Appreciate the comment. And what he said is it alarming that Cardano has been outperformed by Solana significantly, and they were created around the same time? Cardano almost seems like Dogecoin, just smoke and mirrors. And I don't know if this was a disingenuous comment, but I do want to talk about this nonetheless, because we talked about this all the way back in 2023. And yes, Solana did a very good job in the early part of this market cycle. If you guys remember, all the way back in the depths of the bear market, we saw Solana obviously had major FTX exposure, and it caused it to go through a very, very significant drop. And what this was a huge opportunity for people that were willing to take massive risk, because at the time, Solana was very, very centralized, had tons of bugs, tons of issues. And so people that were throwing money at Solana were just asking to lose their money. And luckily it worked out for them. Solana early on in this market cycle was a huge outperformer. It did like a 20x, while most assets were still severely lagging behind, ADA included. And that's because you went from the extremes to the extremes, right? And what we saw during that time too was Solana gained huge traction in terms of meme coins, because people were looking for opportunity. They were looking to make significant gains. All right. Now things have changed, because there are still fundamental problems with the Solana blockchain, and it just hasn't really gained much traction. In fact, when you look at all the way back here in March of 2024, apart from, the November surge, which was fine, and then the Trump Melania meme coin surge, it hasn't really done a whole lot. And sure, you could probably say the same thing about ADA, right? Because we obviously got our November surge and breakout. But since that time, ADA's remained resilient, while Solana has not. And actually, there's a chart that shows this. This is the ADA Solana chart. Okay. You guys can see ADA versus Solana kind of sucked throughout 2024 or 2023 into the early part of 2024 into the later part of 2024. But then things changed. ADA started to outpace Solana, and it has been outpacing Solana since the start of November. All right. And this isn't really surprising because we actually talked about this back in 2023. We actually talked about the fact that Solana would probably be a better early market performer and ADA would be a better late market performer. And what you're actually seeing ADA do versus Solana is set higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. Not really a surprising thing. Cardano has a big narrative around it right now. And frankly, it's not a broken product. And this isn't to throw shade at Solana, but we know that there are fundamental issues that have not been addressed. It's the reason why Solana hasn't run away with the crypto world, right? It had an opportunity to do so because of the amount of launches, because of the amount of daily active users, and yet it has not escaped its own narrative. All right. And that is a great, great sign for Cardano and for ADA. And what this has meant is that the door has been left wide open for huge Cardano adoption. What I would also argue right now is I would say that actually Solana is more like Dogecoin than ADA is like Dogecoin. And what I mean by that is which of the three has the lowest inflation? It's actually ADA. Which of the three actually has a fixed supply? It's ADA. So I don't like the comparison. I would say that, right now, in the early part of this market cycle, and back in 2023, I might have even talked about this in 2022. I had said that by the end of this market cycle, we're probably going to see ADA and Solana have very similar market caps. Right now, Solana is about a $96 billion market cap. ADA is about a $28 billion market cap. I projected that both of these would probably be about $500 billion by the end of this market cycle. And that still really wouldn't surprise me. It's possible we could actually see Solana be a little bit less just because there are some other up and comers in the space. But right now, what you need to know is that this is playing out exactly like we discussed. This isn't really a surprise. And then one of the big reasons that I forgot to mention why Solana did so well early on is huge presence of VCs, huge presence of VCs. They pumped the asset, retail chased, things did well. And people don't realize that here in 2025, there are actually some significant unlocks coming in terms of Solana. We have yet to see how that is going to affect price, but hopefully that answers a lot of those questions. ADA has historically been a much better late market performer than early market performer. And what really gives me confidence about this is the fact that we have not even seen major adoption hit yet in this market cycle. That is where ADA can do some of its best work. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts below, but have a great day. Catch you guys in the next one. Take care.